So let's move into a little exploration of our tank. Here it is. This is me and you. A beautiful Laliche crystal, cut crystal vase. On the bottom half of the vase are all of these holes. We come that way. The Creator creates us full of holes so that love can pour through us to touch the world. Don't you just love it when you know love is coming through you and it's changing somebody's life? When you buy groceries and you look at the cashier and you say to that person, thanks for working on a Saturday night so that I can get my groceries. And their face lights up. When somebody's stranded on the side of the road and you pull over and you say, can I give you a hand? When a family member is just struggling in life and you just sit with them. When your client comes to you and their story is of brokenness and rawness, and you hold the sacred space of listening with them and they have some healing because somebody heard their story. Love is pouring through these holes all day long, 24/7. Now our task, of course, is to open ourselves up, and this is open vase here, to receiving the things that make us feel alive. Because whatever makes you feel alive is filling your tank. Here's the catch. If we are not being mindful to this level, it will drop because we have to be active to a certain degree in participating in the filling of this tank. There's another tank. This is our stress tank, and it has a lid, and it will pressurize. So the lower the level on this one, the higher the level on this tank. And when it gets to the top, all pressurized and ugly and filled with pus, it will blow. You don't believe me. I'll tell you what it's like. Went through a particular hard patch a few years back. I don't remember all the details, but I was just feeling stressed. I wasn't paying any attention to my being. I'm a reasonably handy guy around the house, can renovate and that kind of thing. I don't enjoy it, but I have the ability to do it. So we were doing some rentals in the basement, and there was a big clump of concrete there, like a pitcher's mound when we bought the house. And I wanted to smooth that out a bit. So I bought some ready mix and mixed it up nice and thin. And I don't like working with concrete, not even a little. And I had a trowel, and I was troweling that. And of course, the more I worked it, the stiffer it got. If you've ever worked with concrete, you got a kind of a limited space there. And I'm trying to feather it out and just make it look beautiful, smooth as a baby's bum. And it just wasn't working. It wasn't a baby's bum. It looked like monkeys had tromped through it. And finally, I just couldn't take it anymore. I just lost it. And I took my trowel, and I just started smashing it. Oh, yeah, stupid, stupid, stupid. And there's cement flying all over the place, in my hair, on the walls. And then I looked down in the middle of this explosion, and you know that whole pitcher's mound? It had got softened up by that wet cement, and it just all peeled up. I went, huh? Holy mackerel. And I scooped it up with a shovel, and I put it in a big pail, cleaned up the walls, and it just looked like it had never existed. My wife came home, and I said, look at the floor. She's like, that's amazing. And then she looks at the trowel, and it was just all bent and mangled. She said, what happened here? You don't want to know. It was ugly. The trowel didn't make it. Now, nothing really got damaged. But what if that had been a person in front of me? Right? What if my reputation had depended on that moment? And my stress tank, this tank was so low in me and this one so high, and it blew. And maybe you've had that experience where you just lost your temper. You just lost it for a moment. It doesn't mean we're bad people. It means that we weren't paying attention. We weren't paying attention to this tank. This is the important one. So our next couple hours is about what do we do to make sure that this thing is staying reasonably full. I'm not suggesting we want to be right at the top all the time. We could be, but life does have some times when we drain a bit. But when this gets down around here, just because our tank is empty doesn't mean the needs of the people around us quit, right? So, our family, our clients, our friends, our community are still going to be drawing love out of us even when we hardly have any to pour out. And they start sucking air. And do you know what? It really hurts. It really hurts us inside when we are empty and the people around us still want to take something from us. And it's not their fault. It's just that we don't have anything to give. So Robert J. Wicks says, the question is not whether stress will appear and take a toll on those working as caregivers. Instead, it is to what extent professionals and personal caregivers take the essential steps to appreciate, limit, and learn from this very stress to continue and even deepen their personal lives and roles as helpers and healers. So let us begin. With the people at your table, and you know you're welcome to get up and move if you're tired of talking with those same folk. I do want to remind you, though, that there's only one of you and one of them. So each of you is like a diamond, like really. Some of you are kind of rough, but you're diamonds. 3 challenges you face in your caregiver role. Or just come up with 3 challenges total at your table would be fine. I'll give you 3 minutes and 11 seconds. What are some of the challenges facing us as caregivers? We have no challenges. We are brilliant. We can do anything. Good. We'll go on to the...
Saying no without guilt.
Saying no without guilt. Yeah, welcome to caregiver world, hey? Because we are caregivers, because we're empathic, because we love, and we want to bring healing to the world. Bill, can you, I really need to talk to you. I know you're down in Cardston. As soon as you get home, will you meet with me? Yes, definitely, because I'm a caregiver. That's a real story. I said, I'm not available till Monday. I'll be glad to meet with you on Monday, 3 o'clock. I'll even drive out to your farm. But my inclination was, okay, yeah, I'll get home tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to see my cousin in Airdrie on the way home. I'll be home I could go out at 3 o'clock on Saturday. I haven't seen my wife for 5 days. That doesn't matter. She's not that important. No, really, that went through my head, right? Right? But I've gone to a bunch of these workshops now. And what I've learned is one of the most important things I can do for the people in my life is to say no at certain times. What else is a challenge?
Making everybody poor health, their health isn't good, and they have to help themselves. Because you can only do so much.
You can only do so much. They have to help themselves. An echo of a comment from this table. To know what is our responsibility as a caregiver and what is the care receiver's responsibility. And those lines are constantly in shift. They're in flux. And it takes a lot of sensitivity to know.
I try to paraphrase it, but I'll do anything for you that you can't do for yourself.
Okay, I'll do anything for you you can't do for yourself.
Text me a little bit.
Yeah. Nice, thank you. There's a comment over here somewhere.
I think it's been answered.
Okay. Okay.
I have some.
Yeah.
Not all of them can do for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And they are probably the most frustrating ones that there are to look after.
They take a lot from us, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
But you can't just say that to someone suffering from dementia either, because they get to the point where they don't know. You know, they want to please, but they don't know how.
Yeah. I just did a round of hospice volunteer training. We do it 2 or 3 times a year. We had 15 amazing people across demographic ages. And our nurse practitioner who was instructing one portion said to the group, as volunteers, would you be willing to wipe somebody's bum? Put up your hand if you would. A couple people put up their hand. Would you be willing to diaper? Put up your hand. A couple people put up their hand. If they threw up all over the place, would you be willing to clean it up? And so on and so forth. A number of possible things. And then she says, so most of the people didn't want to do any of that. And she said, I want to tell you I'm describing care of a baby. Care of a baby. You got to wipe their bum, you got to change the diaper, they might puke on you. Right? They might not be able to move by themselves, you might have to transfer them. We think about caring for a baby, that's fine. When we think about changing that to care of an elder, all of a sudden we put some mental barriers to it. One of the challenges we might face in our caregiving is changing our perspective on the care, on what it means, on reassessing dignity and quality of life. Come in, love.
I'm waiting for somebody.
Oh, all right. Never mind then. You will be welcome, though. A story for you, the worry tree. Once upon a time, there was a man who was a strong carpenter, and he worked in the city up in Calgary. He worked on those high-rise buildings. And sometimes during the day, things would go wrong. Machinery would falter, supplies wouldn't come, and people would get stressed. And all of those metal filings of emotion would stick to him. Now, he lived outside of the city in a beautiful little community. And where he lived, there was a big oak tree that had grown up right next to his lane, and the branches spread right over top of the sidewalk. When he was coming home every day, he'd reach up and he'd run his hands along that branch. Now, waiting at home for him was a little boy, 5 years old, the love of his life. And when he came through the door, this big, huge, strong man would wrap that little boy in a big bear hug, and all was right with the world. One day, his little boy says, Daddy, how come when you come home every day, you always reach up and touch that big old oak tree? Well, Sonny says, that's my worry tree. Worry tree? What's that? Well, you know, sometimes sad and bad things happen at work, and I don't want to bring all that worry into my house. That wouldn't be any good. So I just hang it on the tree. And then I come in, and I'm good. And the little boy thinks about that for a while, and he says, well, Daddy, how come in the morning when I watch you go to work, you don't pick your worries up off the tree? And his dad says, well, I walk out and I look for them, and you know what? They're always gone in the morning. We all, as caregivers, need somewhere to leave our worries, all that magnetic filings I talked about, all that energy from other people, someplace to leave it and not have it come into our home. And if we're personal caregivers to somebody in our home, we need to have a sacred space in our home that is our tank-filling space. A room, a chair, somewhere where we go there for a few minutes and we leave our caregiver role, if even only for 5 minutes or 15 minutes while they're napping. A place we go to sit and we say, that does not enter this space. Here, I breathe for me. Welcome to Flight 992, destination Cardston, Alberta. There are emergency exits over the wing here and here. If by chance the cabin depressurizes, an oxygen mask will drop down in front of you. Please put yours on first before you put on anybody else's. You've heard this, okay? Why do you want to put your mask on first? Okay, so because if you pass out on the floor, the people beside you are hooped. So get your mask on, take a deep breath, and then you can function to help the people around you. That is what the worry tree is about. Personal caregivers, you find a space in your home and you call it sacred. And in that space, you get to breathe the deep oxygen. You knit, you read, you pray, meditate, sit in silence. I don't care. Whatever it is that makes your tank go higher, that crystal vase tank, whatever raises the volume on that, eat dark chocolate. I don't care. As long as it's moral and ethical, do it in that space. When you step out of that space, you will be 10 times better to re-enter caregiving for your loved one. For us who are professionals, we leave the energy of our work outside the door of our residence. You put something on the outside of your door, a plaque. Find a tree, a shrub, anything that is willing to receive that energy from you. And you touch it before you go and you say, I leave here, right on this spot, the cares of this day. You take a deep breath, you open your door, and you enter that other part of your life, of living your life there at home. So it's a 3-part formula. Pause, breathe, listen. That's the name of my work. Pause, breathe, listen. PBL creates an acronym that could be pronounced PEBBLE. That's how we remember. If you need to remember, get a tiny little smooth stone and put it in your pocket. And remember, PEBBLE, PBL, pause, breathe, listen. Pause is mindfulness. We have very little hope. I said, actually, we have no hope. No hope of surviving as caregivers if we do not stop once in a while and ask how we're doing. Mindfulness is the awareness that emerges through paying attention on purpose, in the present moment, non-judgmentally, to the unfolding of experience moment to moment. A quote from Dr. John Kabat-Zinn from the States, an MD. Mindfulness is saying, okay, what's going on with me right now? And in fact, in my story, pause is a tiny sliver of a moment. A few years ago, I took a whitewater canoe instructing course on the Kananaskis River. Do you remember when the Kananaskis flooded a few years back? Well, that was the year I took the course, and it was just rip-snorting fast, that river was. If I had hair, it would have been standing straight up on my eyebrows. Aren't eyebrows something? They just keep growing and growing. What is the deal with that? My dad said my hair slid off my head and went all over my body. Said that of himself. Now I echo it. Anyway, I was fortunate to be in the canoe with the instructor, and I'm in the bow, and he's in the stern. And he would just holler stuff at me. Lean, pry, paddle, hard, lean. And I just tried to keep up with what he was saying because I didn't want to go in the drink. The river was so fast, like it was like driving in a car, just on the sides, just blur, blur, blur. We finally get to an eddy. So in river language, let's say this is the river, okay? And you've got a big rock here, and the water's flowing this way, and it goes around that rock. On the downside of that rock, there's a little calm spot called an eddy. I don't know the physics of it, but I do know that the current is reversed in the eddy. So if you know how to pull your canoe around into that eddy, you can put your paddle down, lay down for a nap. You will not float downstream. I don't care how fast that river is. It's brilliant. So he gets us in this eddy, and finally we can put our paddle down. We just start breathe, relax, just be here. And then it actually takes some skill to get out of the eddy back into the stream. In the formula, pause, breathe, listen, pausing is saying, I need an eddy in my life. Even if it's a 15-minute break, or today I take off, or I'm gone for the weekend, or whatever. But pausing is just the realization, I've got to slow it down. So here's the thing. So many people in our culture will never come to the awakening that they even need to slow down. Most people will never get to the pause point. They just go and they go and they go until, as our gentleman friend said, his body said, that's it, I'm shutting this deal down. We're not going anymore. We'll crash if we have to, but I'm not going another step. We don't want that to happen. Oh, my heart bleeds for him, for what he went through. Think about the last time you did something that was just for you. It wasn't for your care receiver. It wasn't for work. It wasn't for your neighbor or your friend. And I'm not going to ask you to discuss it. Just think about it for yourself. When was the last time you did something just for you? How long ago was that? A couple of days? Maybe today. Maybe this is it today. This doesn't count. Prior to this, when did you do something just for you? Oh yeah, no, this is not my first rodeo here. How did you feel when you were doing it? Did it fill you or drain you? Oops. So here's the thing. Sometimes we feel guilty when we do things just for us. Like, I should be at home with my loved one. Or I should be doing something for my kids, or whatever. I should put my kid's mask on first in the plane. We have that strange thing, like, well, it comes from, to some degree, from our spirituality, right? You know, do good unto others, love your neighbor as yourself, that kind of thing. That's all really good. But it doesn't happen when you're in the high yellow, low red zone. It doesn't happen when your tank's empty. How much I would like to have turned back the clock and gone and seen that funeral family and sat down with them and just loved them. And said to them, I cannot take your pain away, but I will sit in it with you. But my tank was empty. So because I did not pause and ask myself, Bill, is it time for a break? I didn't do that, then they paid the price. Okay, the second part, pause is just a moment. Pause in this whole formula is 30 seconds long. It is, whoa, it's time for me to just assess things. I gotta see how I'm doing. As soon as we've had that mind-blowing moment of self-awareness, then we can breathe. I'm going to invite you to do an exercise with me, to the degree that you're comfortable. It's called a body scan. And Dr. Eric Dinnenberg is going to just lead us on this scan. And what we're going to do is just take a moment just to be aware of what's going on in our body from foot to head and back down. And so to do it, if you're willing, I would just invite you just to sit, put whatever you got in your lap just on the table, and just sit comfortable like this. You can leave your eyes open or close them, whatever suits you. And just listen to Dr. Eric's guidance. He's just basically going to have us be aware of our feet and our ankles and so on. The purpose of this is to introduce us to being mindful of what our dashboard is telling us.
Welcome to the body scan practice.
This is an exercise you can easily do at any moment in your day, to just sit for a few minutes. Just say to yourself, okay, body, what are you telling me? Because we get focused on things outside of ourselves. So not discussion with each other, but just think for a moment. When you're tense, when you're stressed, where do you feel it in your body? Your gut, your breathing, your shoulders, do your joints ache? Maybe you're one of these people whose shoulders slowly creep up towards their ears when they're stressed. When grief clients come to me, I'll say, when was the last time you were conscious of taking a really deep breath? Because often in grief, we forget to breathe. We breathe very shallowly. And that kind of breath doesn't nourish us very well. Long, deep breaths relax our body and they oxygenate us. So we breathe deeply from down here then a good middle chest breath, and then our lungs fill right up to here. We can feel our chest expanding. A long, deep breath. So we've got this vase full of holes. Trauma, stories, drain that tank. One of the things we can do is to be aware of where we have choice in our trauma stories. So for just like 1 minute and 12 seconds, 1 minute and 12 seconds, name 2 or 3 places with people at your table wherein you hear stories of trauma. Where do we hear trauma stories? Go. Okay, let's make a quick list. Where do we hear stories of trauma? What do you guys say? Stories of trauma, where do we hear them? Everywhere. Okay, every group tells me that. Okay, yes, but... Sorry? News. Okay, stop there. News. Where else?
At seminars.
Seminar. You're absolutely right. We talked about educational opportunities. Yeah. Okay, where do we hear trauma stories?
The hospital.
Hospital. Clinics, etc. Home, yes, and our own family life. Where else? Movies, yes. Movies are filled with trauma. I just went to Justice League with my 19-year-old son. Well, I love Superman. He's my favorite. But I'll tell you, there was some trauma in that story. They brought Superman back from the dead, for Pete's sake. I mean, come on, how much trauma is involved in that? Where else do we hear stories of trauma? Workplace. Yes. What did you guys already said one? What was it?
Said the hairdresser.
Hairdresser. Oh my gosh. The last time I went to... No, wait a minute. That wasn't me. Do they still do eyebrows? Where else do we hear stories?
I think we mentioned it all.
Have you had them all?
We were saying you could stand in line at the grocery store
Store.
and just hear people talking. And
Oh
just
yeah.
hear.
So in the general public.
Yes.
Thank you. There's still a couple we haven't mentioned. What about, do we have any more from you guys? Where do we hear trauma stories?
Children at school.
Children at school. How about this one? Books. Newspapers. In other words, you're right, everywhere. We are utterly inundated with stories of trauma in our culture because of social media, because of electronics, because we live in communities where hard things happen, because our own families have gone through trauma. So I highly recommend cutting down on the amount of trauma input. I don't watch any news anymore on TV. None. I catch some wee snippets of news stories on the radio, and that's enough to keep me going on what's going on in the world. But you know what? I don't need to know the media's take on some shooting going on and hear endless rounds of that story, because it's just going to drain my tank, and guess what? That's precious, that tank. It is a precious reserve that I need for my grief clients, I need for my wife, I need for my sister-in-law. Right? We need to savor that beautiful, precious tank of our love to the people for whom it can have an impact. I don't want to waste it on trauma stories on the news that's going to drain me. I'm not saying I don't care about those people. I could say a prayer for them. That's fine. But if it's just going to drain me and I'm not being able to give anything out to the world in goodness, we don't want to do that. So you know what? If you're so inclined, let today be the day you start cutting down on the trauma inputs that you have control over, for the sake of the people that are receiving your care. If you turn to about page 9, I don't know, 8, page 8, there's a big plate. I'd also like to acknowledge Francois Mathieu and her work in developing this exercise. Do you all have a writing utensil? No? I've got some extras. Well, anybody needing a pen or something? What? Nobody? Okay, good, because I brought all these pens. I want to use at least one. Come on. There you go, love. All right, on the inside of your plate, meaning this portion just right in here, I invite you, if you are so inclined, to write down all the things you do and are responsible for in an average day.
I need a bigger plate.
I hear you. Not the first time I've heard that. Okay, so from the time you get up, you go pee, you brush your teeth, you comb your eyebrows, right? Whatever you do, from the time you get up, including your personal and professional day, until you fall exhausted into bed at night, put it down on that plate. I'll give you 30 seconds. Just kidding. Now, as you're going along, and you can keep writing, but just pay attention to things on your plate that you would like not to do. Right? Like, I don't like picking up dog poop in the backyard. Somebody's got to do it. My wife won't do it. Well, that's not true, actually. I shouldn't be mean to my wife when she's not here. She does do it. But nobody wants to. So if there's things on your plate that you would just like not to do, whether it's realistic or not, please underline them. So underline anything on your plate that you would like to change, whether it's realistic or not. Now, I appreciate for some of you, this is getting to be a really long list on this plate because our days are filled, right? It's not like we're all like just sitting around eating jelly beans all day. Okay, look at the things that you underlined. And circle the ones that you could change even by 1%. Meaning, like I could say to my wife, look, would you pick up the dog poop on Mondays? I'll do the rest of the week. That might be a 1% change. So of all the things you underlined, the things you don't really want to be doing, are there any that you could circle and say, I could make an adjustment in this area? Okay, so anything you could potentially actually change, draw a circle around it. Okay, last piece. And you can keep writing on the other stuff as you listen, but on this outer ring of this plate, this here, I invite you to write down things that you wish you had more time for. It could be something you used to do but you had to quit for some reason, or something you've never done but always wanted to. Whatever it is, you're not currently doing it and you would like to be doing it. Like right now, I would like to be eating dark chocolate with almonds, and I'm not. Sometimes life's like that, right? There's something kind of crazy about this. Because you see, on all of our plates are certain things we just wish we weren't doing. And sometimes life has smelly, messy, ugly bits to it that are just a part of being human in community. But sometimes we end up taking on responsibilities that we resent. And the thing is, on the outside of the plate are a bunch of things we're not doing, but we want to. How do we end up with things on our plate that we don't want to do and things off of our plate that we do want to do? Sometimes life circumstances put us there. Sometimes finances or time and energy put us there. The purpose of this exercise is to help us breathe into awareness. What is going on in my life? What's on the middle of that plate are the things that drain your tank. They take energy. And that's not bad. It just means this is where I'm pouring love out onto the world. Love comes into me, pours through the holes in my vase, and it waters the world. The things on the outside of the plate are things that we want to do, that probably would be life-giving and would help fill our tank. So first we pause, which is that moment of awareness where we say, I need to check in with myself. Then we breathe. And breathe is assessment. It is asking myself hard questions of what's going on with me right now in my life. Right? What is my body telling me? Am I not sleeping? Are my guts disturbed? Do my joints ache? Or do I feel vibrant and flexible and energized? What is my schedule telling me? When I look at my responsibilities, are they saying, Bill, whoa, you got to dial it back? Or does my plate say to me, Bill, you got a lot of good things on there. Eat well. Breathe. I mean literally breathe. Be present enough to right now to be aware that your body's doing miraculous things and you didn't even give it permission. You got enzymes and hormones and digestion and circulation and the electrical storm going on in your nervous system, and you didn't ask for any of that to happen. What a miracle. And in the midst of that, your body's trying to communicate something to you. It's saying, well done, good and faithful servant. Or it's saying, slow down. Or who knows what. Breathing is assessment. It is asking, how am I doing right now? Because chances are the world around you isn't going to stop and ask you. It isn't going to say, Bill, just want to take you aside for a moment and just say, Bill, how are you doing? I might have a friend or somebody might do that, but chances are the world's going to be happy to receive the love coming through me. I need to take responsibility to myself to slow down, find an eddy, and say, okay, let's assess. My partner, my wife, she's a beautiful soul, Dutch and Irish and all. That's not her fault. She texted me last Friday. I was doing some hospice work. She texts me. I just was with a client. I get out of the interaction with the client. I look at my phone. It says, do you want to go to Cuba? That's nothing we've ever discussed, ever. I've never been off the continent with my wife. So I'm like, that's a little suspicious. So I get home. I said, what's up? She goes, I just went online. I found this crazy Black Friday deal. We could go to Cuba for 8 days. Cheap. So we are. She is wise enough to know that the two of us need to step out for a minute and do this work of pause and breathe. And we're going to go to Cuba and wander around some farms and talk with some people and just be in life and breathe really deep for a few minutes. That's pretty extreme for us. Like, that's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. But you could take a weekend, right? You could take an afternoon. You could say, you know what? I'm going to get somebody to care for my loved one, like you did today, clearly. And you know what? I'm just going to check and see how I'm doing. In your books, probably, I'm guessing, page 11, 10, 11, and 12. This is homework. But there's a self-care assessment. Thank you to Karen Sakvitny and Lorianne Perlman for their hard work. All this is a dashboard. It's just saying you don't have to do all the things in this assessment, but just think about whether your life might benefit from these things. Like, do you eat regularly? It is really helpful to eat every 2 or 3 days, for sure. No, that's true, hey? It's even beneficial to eat healthy, if you can believe that. They say limit the amount of cheesies and chips that you have in your diet. Not bacon, but cheesies. All right, before you do that assessment, just take a moment to pause and check in with yourself, which means I listen to my body, I listen to my heart, I listen to my thoughts, and I check in with my spirit. Okay, don't literally do this, but I'm going to ask you to we're going to break for a coffee break. Is that okay, Kathy? In 4 minutes. 4 minutes? Is that enough warning for you guys? More than enough. All right, 3 minutes then. All right, whatever you got down in your hands, just please put on the table. Okay, in this exercise, I'm just going to ask you to be honest. That's all. Just bare vulnerability. Just lay it bare. And it goes like this. If you have ever been to Europe, please stand up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us. Great. Sit down. If you have ever ridden in a hot air balloon, please stand up. Have you? Oh, you're sitting down. Okay. This is the first time. I've always had somebody in my group have a hot air balloon ride. Okay, if you have... You have! Oh, thank you, Kathy. Oh my gosh, you saved me. All right, I thought I was going to break my record. 3 years straight of workshops every time somebody's been in a hot air balloon. If you have ever broken a rib, stand up. And that includes me. Yeah. No, that's a first. Sit down. That's funny. Settle down. If you've ever, okay, I'm only asking for your honesty, all right? If you've ever stuck gum under a table or a desk, please stand up. All right. Okay, gum under the table. Oh, yeah, okay, the rest of you aren't even telling the truth. Sit down. If you have ever ridden a camel, please stand up. Serious, eh? Good on you. All right, crazy people. Okay, here's another one. I've never missed a workshop yet where I didn't have a participant. If you have ever skydived. Thank you, Jerome. 2. Excellent, thank you. And you live to tell about it. If you have ever rolled a vehicle. That is not nearly as much fun as people say it is. Sit down. Okay, if you have ever eaten snake. Have you? What did it taste like?
Chicken.
Yeah, the chickens hate that. I wonder if people who normally eat snake, if they eat chicken, do they say it tastes like snake? I don't know. Okay, this is the last one. Last one, I promise. And then we're going to break for coffee, okay? Every workshop, this is an issue, this last one. People are uncomfortable with it. They don't want to admit it. And the fact is, it's just a part of life. All right. If you have ever farted in public, stand up. And this is how we tell who's honest and who's not. All right, you crazy people. We'll break for coffee. So we asked this question. What would it take to wake us up? A health scare? Do we need to have a cardiac event or stroke or be on stress leave? Maybe a death or an illness of a close family member. Maybe wondering how come others seem to enjoy life and we can find it so hard, or maybe a life full of regrets. Before we stop and take stock of how we're doing. Some people will run that hamster wheel. They'll run and run and run and run and run. And then all of a sudden, life will force them to stop. But we could choose in this day to do that assessment, that listening. Best to avoid life forcing it on us. And what we don't want is this. So that leads us to our last portion. Pause, breathe, listen. Pause is that fraction of a moment where we say, I need to pay attention to myself. Breathe is literally noticing our breath and asking ourselves the hard questions. Is this still working for me? Am I living the life that I'm seeking to live? Have I indeed farted in public? I might have slipped out and we didn't know it. Listening is about attentiveness to yourself, to your wise self, to your community. It's about a commitment to change. It's about letting go of certain things and beginning new things. It's about action and change and movement. So the last part of understanding how do I make my tank full is responding to what we heard. If I do a self-assessment, if I take an afternoon dedicated to me and I go out for a walkabout and I listen to my body and I pay attention to what the deepest, honest part of my heart, not the part that lies to myself. You know what I mean by that? Like sometimes we lie to ourselves. I'll say, is this job or this relationship still good for me? And I don't want to acknowledge the truth, so I say, yeah, it's okay, it's good enough. Underneath that, deep down, I might be saying, I got to get out of this job, this relationship, this experience. So if we go on our walkabout and we're listening to our body, we deeply listen to our heart, we are honest, and we listen to our thoughts, to all of that assessment, and then we say, okay, being, what are you telling me? 3 years ago, my being said, Bill, you have to leave parish work. Your soul has moved on. You cannot stay here anymore. A part of me didn't want to do that. I thought it was delicious being in parish work, connecting with people, loving people. But if I was really honest in assessment, and fortunately at that time I did listen, it was time to go. So this last piece of the formula is about movement. It is earnestly responding to what we've learned. Now, here's the thing about my presentations. I'm not selling anything. And I have no interest in suggesting that you need to radically change your life right now. Quite the opposite, in fact. I would say you have the tools at your disposal to make small adjustments so that your tank fills a little more. You don't need to go out and buy gym memberships. You don't need to get on the latest fad diet. You don't need to listen to the Oprah channel. Just be attentive to yourself. I would recommend do something for your body, do something for your heart, do something for your soul. And if you're already doing a whole bunch for all of those, thank yourself and continue your practice of mindfully attending to what your body, heart, and soul need. So with a partner, not even your whole table, just with a partner, unless there's only 3 of you at the table, then I guess all 3 of you can talk because one person's going to just sit there watching the other 2. With a partner, discuss what could you do right now, like literally in this day, excluding this workshop, to enhance your well-being, or overall in your life right now. Just one thing you could do that could enhance your well-being. I'll give you a couple of minutes. A couple of things we could do to enhance our self-care. I'm not going to ask you to share what you said, but would you be so kind as to share what your partner said? We don't like talking about ourselves, but we'll talk about our partner's stuff, unless they give you a kick under the table. What did your partner say?
He said that along with his bike riding that he does every day, he wants to incorporate some strength training to make the bike riding even better and better himself.
Okay, so that's great. So just even adding a small bit into what we do for our bodies can help. Francois Mathieu says, don't ask for big change. It's very stressful. Ask for 1% change. So, and let me give you an example. Let's say I don't do any walking. I walk to my car and back. That's all I do in my life. But I want to start walking. A 1% change would be, I'm just going to walk around the block once, twice a week. Very, very small. But see, I could ask myself, well, could I walk around the block once on Mondays and Thursdays after work? Well, probably could. I start doing that. Next thing you know, I'm walking around the block 3 days a week. But I let myself just be very, very gentle. A 1% change might be, I don't eat very well, but I feel really frustrated by the idea of like changing my whole diet. Maybe I like carrots. I'm going to have carrots once a week. I'll add that in. I'm not even going to stop eating burgers. I'm just going to start doing stuff, because here's a hint. It's way easier to start something than to stop something. So a dietitian told me, don't put pressure on yourself to stop eating unhealthy things. Just start eating really healthy things. So I had a client who was struggling with alcoholism. And mixed in with his addiction was every day after work at 10 p.m., he'd stop by McDonald's and grab a burger or two. And he was about 25, so he could eat a lot without gaining a lot of weight, but it was just making him ill. I said, okay, look, Calvin. Take some fruit or vegetables with you that you enjoy, take them to work and start eating them at work. Keep going to McDonald's, I don't care. But just add in. Eventually, if you add in enough really healthy food, your body's going to stop craving unhealthy stuff, and you're just not going to want to stop at McDonald's every day because you're full of good nutrition. So do a 1% change in your body. Just a gentle, easy change. What did your partner say? No. Yeah, no, yeah. No, you tell hers. Oh, you don't want yours told?
Oh, we have
That's
the
fine.
same one.
We have the same one.
Oh my gosh. The two of you, what did you say?
You're talking about having a pedicure, something.
Oh,
you know,
wonderful.
or doing things for yourself like that.
Did you really both say the same thing? I'd do a pedicure. That sounds like it'd be wonderful. If somebody massage your feet and clean the gunk out of your nails? Man.
We can't bend over.
I don't know about that. Maybe a bright purple. What did your partner say?
Same thing.
Pedicure?
No, walk.
Oh, walk. Okay, yeah.
Having your feet out in nature to do it, like not
Yeah.
treadmills and that. Really, and then we remembered when we were hugging trees together. and
Oh,
we
nice.
walked. Yeah, so we both said the same thing.
Hug trees and walk. I don't know, you guys are just going to confuse me. There's three of you. No, go ahead. What did either one of them say?
Lorraine said walk.
Walk, okay. And journaling. Yeah, so journaling can be really helpful. If we're writing our story out. What did your partner say? Walking. Boy, there's a lot of walking. How good it is to move. In Camrose, we have a grief support walking group. Meets Wednesday mornings. Every Wednesday morning, we have a drop-in group where people just come to, in the summer, we walk around the lake. In the winter, we're on the indoor track. When we walk, we're processing emotion. What did you say for you and Lester?
We were going to enjoy the pageant, the life pageant.
Yeah.
That would incorporate mind, body, and soul.
So getting out, doing something, a social function, yeah, that can be really rejuvenating.
And spiritual.
And spiritual. Like you get the whole package right there. Mind, body, and soul. Okay, at the back.
She said that she wants to be that skinny as that girl.
Is that
Stand on
girl?
the rock.
And stand on a rock like that? Oh, brother. All right. Is that a 1% change for you? You are brilliant. I'd hate to see if you were doing a 90% change. And what did she say?
I didn't say a word. I just.
You were just thinking about that.
I want to be there too.
I don't know. I've never had a group like this. Let's go to core values. I'm just going to jump past that for a minute. This one right here. This is you. You are actually a quartz sealer. Do you remember when I told you you're a crystal vase? No. You're a quartz sealer. Anybody here do canning? Yeah, my wife does canning. I love the fruits of her labor. Okay, into this jar, this is your being, goes all of your life. The biggest rocks are the most important things, your core values. Then the medium-sized rocks are stuff that's important, but it's not that important. And then is the tiny rocks, which is like the stuff I have to do. And then the sand is the piddly ass stuff that takes up all your time, and it's like, I don't know. And it looks like this. There's no way you can squeeze everything into your life that you want to. Your biggest core values aren't even in there. What do we do to change this to make sure that we can get everything in? Okay. So believe it or not, that is the same volume of stuff. But you put the big rocks in first, then the medium, and then the little rocks, then you shake the sand in, and you've still got room at the top here for whatever you want to add. Right? So if you look on the page after your plate exercise, I don't know what number that is, there's an exercise on core values. Page 9, thank you, Lester. And on this page it asks, what relationships are most important to you? What things are most important to you? What activities are most important to you? What attitudes and beliefs are most important to you? So I'm not going to ask you to fill this out now. This is something to do when you've got a quiet moment by yourself. But I do want to discuss core values for a minute because they are very important. Our core values set our direction in life. It's like your personal mission statement. Nobody can tell you what your core values should be. We each get to adopt our own core values. They're often based on our religious affiliation, our political association, our family of origin may affect these things. But nonetheless, as adults, you can change your core values if you think they're not working for you. If we do not act in accordance with our core values, we will put ourselves in serious jeopardy. Let me give you an example. I used to facilitate a men's breakfast many years ago. So once a month, a group of good redneck men and I got together and cooked a real good bacon breakfast. And then we would chit-chat. And one day, our conversation was, what do you regret? There was about 8 of us. And the guys were mostly about 55 years and up. The bulk of them retired. Every one of them ran around the table and had the same regret. Can you believe that? Do you know what it was?
Working too much.
Yeah. I wished I'd spent time with my kids. I was so bent on working 14 hours a day in the patch or in the field. And the decades rolled by and I didn't see my kids grow up. I deeply regret it. Do you know why they regret it? Because they had a core value of supporting family and they forgot that that support included actually seeing them. And so at the end of their life, well, no, not the end, just further in their life, they have this big ball of regret because they didn't act in accordance with their core values. It doesn't matter to me what your personal core values are. That's not the purpose of this talk. Only that you be aware of your core values, that you write them down. And this exercise can guide you through that. If you just think, what relationships are most important to you and what about them is of value? Write it down. My most important relationships are, and I value them because, and then take a look at your life because we're in the listen part. Pause, breathe, listen. Listen is make a change. So articulate your core values and then change your life to be in adherence with those values. Or change your values if they're outdated. I mean, when I was a little boy, I valued collecting rocks. I don't value that anymore. We get to change our values as we grow. Now let's say a spaceship hovers down to the earth and right over you for 24/7 for a week. You can't see it. It's really tiny. And it records everything you think and do. Would this little spaceship know your core values based on the last 7 days? Or better yet, if they watched you and listened to your thoughts for the last 7 days, what would the spaceship say your core values are? So, if we want to fill our tank, we want to articulate and adhere to our core values. There is just about nothing more important in this day than acknowledging that. Whatever those core values are, your heart and soul have said, this is important to me. It's so important, I want to make sure that this core value guides my decisions and my thoughts and my prayerfulness and how I walk on this earth. If revenge is a core value, then it will guide your actions. If forgiveness is a core value, it will guide your actions. So, what things in your life are most important to you? Is your car important? Your house? Your boat? I have a medicine bag. Is that most important to me? Is my wedding ring important to me? I don't know. But if I can list the most important things, and what opportunity does having this thing afford me? What activities are most important to you? How do you spend your time? And then what attitudes and beliefs are most important to you? And I forget what the second part of that is. How do your attitudes and beliefs guide you? So take a quiet moment at home, sometime in the next few days, and start to work. Literally write down your core values. If you have a partner at home, ask them to do it for themselves too. And then take a look and see, do your core values align with your partner? They don't have to, but you can honor each other's value. My wife values efficiency. She's living with an extraordinarily inefficient human being. But we can still live together. The Mahatma Gandhi said, keep your thoughts positive because your thoughts become your words. Keep your words positive because your words become your behavior. Keep your behavior positive because your behavior becomes your habits. Keep your habits positive because your habits become your values. Keep your values positive because your values become your destiny. Can I tell you a story? You can say no. I'll tell it anyway. I'm just like that. I mean, really, but I thought I'd be polite. Fellow goes to a Cuban beach. And an old fella, though, like really old, balder than me. He's walking down the beach, and there'd been this terrific storm the night before. And it just blew starfish all over the beach. And he's walking down. And down the curve of the beach, he sees a young boy walking along. And periodically, the boy would bend down and pick up a starfish and wing it into the ocean. He'd walk a little bit further, picking his way along. Pick up another one. And by, the old man caught up with the boy. He said, "What are you doing there, son?" Ooh, the boy says, "It was a big storm last night. And it blew all these starfish all over the beach, and they're going to die." The old man says, "Well, I suppose that's true, yeah. But what are you doing?" And the little boy says, "Well, I'm going to save them." "Well," the old man says, "you can't save all of these starfish. There's just thousands of them." And the little boy steps forward and picks one up, and he says, "Nope, but I can save that one." So, it is not any one of our single person's job to save the whole world. But listening is being aware of ourselves right now and being committed to acting on what needs to happen in this moment. I can't save the whole world, but I can be with you folks right here in this moment. And if I spend this whole time thinking about what I have to do tonight or tomorrow, I'm going to lose this opportunity with you. But if I am focused on you right now, then you're the starfish that I can save, or I can partner with at least. In your helping roles, you cannot be the be all and end all for any person. even if it's your spouse or a parent or a child, you need the weaving of other people with you. And together then you make quality of life for you and your care receiver. Our self-care is about compressing a spring. So when that spring is squished together, it has energy that's waiting to happen. And that energy is saved, right? And so it has, that spring wants to push apart. When it gets to the end of its natural expansion, if we're all healthy, we recompress the spring. But if we're not healthy, we start pulling the spring this way, trying to squeeze even more energy out of it, stretching it, and pretty soon it actually loses its, whatever its springiness is called. Filling your own tank is about compressing energy in. So, tonight, as you're processing this day, you're going to think, what am I doing when I feel most alive? Because that's the bottom line. Your core values will guide you to those things. And then you say, you know what, I feel really alive when I'm horseback riding. I had a grief client whose husband had died. And she hadn't been riding for months and months. And I said, what do you do when you just feel alive, when you just feel good in this world? She said, when I'm on the back of a horse. I said, are you ready to get back on a horse? And she said, I am. What are you doing? How are you being when you just feel like, man, I could take on the world? Because whatever that is, do a little bit of it every day if you can. Is there a special treat that you just like? And it's like, I'm not going to eat a lot of this, but I'm going to say, Bill, you did a good job today. You could probably have a piece of dark chocolate. I don't know if I mentioned that, but I just love dark chocolate. Or maybe it's, you got a favorite sitcom. And you don't have time in your life to watch a lot of TV, but once in a while, you just want to indulge and say, I'm going to watch my favorite sitcom. Because that's something that might push some energy into your spring. Maybe it's that friend you haven't seen for a while. You know what, I'm going to text them and see if we could get together for a coffee next weekend. I got to drive up to Calgary to see them, but that's okay. Because it would fill my tank. Kurenza Pidrobeski, the nurse to whom I referred earlier, said that her therapist told her to exercise responsible selfishness. What a delicious term. Responsible selfishness. Take care of yourself. Really deeply fill that tank, because when you do, this world won't be the same. Consider exercise, mini breaks, maybe a 2-minute meditation, an office workout. Step out for fresh air. Give your eyes a break if you look at the computer a lot. Do something creative for 5 minutes. Have a nap. Close the door and dance. We won't discuss it, but just consider what activities are restful for you. In other words, where do you find your eddy? Yeah, you're just thinking about that. When do I really feel, outside of like sleeping at night, which if our tank is low, our sleep is very unrestful. It's very disturbed generally. Just think, when do I really feel like, I'm just at rest? At sunset, or when the sun rises in the morning at about 9 a.m. now. When my grandchildren are just playing. When I'm holding a baby. When I walk through the woods with my dog and I listen to the sounds of crunching leaves and the wind in the trees and the sun on my face. when I sit in quiet meditation and I reach into deep parts of myself, way, way down deep, and I see that beautiful light there, and I know that our Creator shines into that place. When do you feel restful? Rejig your schedule, maybe. Do one nourishing activity every day. I mean, seriously, if you get to the end of the day, and sometimes like I do, and you didn't take a moment just for you, and I mean literally sometimes just a moment, we owe it to ourselves. Every day. To pause, to listen, to assess, that's the breathing, and then to respond. Delegate as necessary and say yes or no. Yes, I will do this thing I've always wanted to do. No, I'm sorry, I won't do that. Adjust your diet. Listen to your compassionate voice. Laugh. And make sure that sometimes in your week you have opportunity for quiet time. Resiliency is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties and toughness. The ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape. So when we have been into our yellow zone, resiliency is that which lets us spring back into green again, later in the day or later in the week. The studies conclusively show that some form of meditation or prayerfulness is critical for us in managing our well-being. So if you don't have a personal meditation or prayer practice, you may wish to look at whatever your roots are. You may wish to reinvest yourself into that. So Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn from the States was practicing medicine in the 80s, and he began to look at how meditation might help his patients who have pain. And what he discovered was that it was nearly as effective for them to learn to pay attention to their breath and to be still as it was to take pain meds, within reason. He then taught some of his colleagues who were deeply stressed as surgeons, general practitioners, the art of just being mindful. And they had tremendous benefit from that. So go back to your tradition. And if you don't have a tradition, find a practice that is resonant with you. Create a daily practice for yourself, just a 1% change. Today, when I get up, I will spend just 3 minutes sitting quietly on the couch and just be still. Thank you for coming, love. Yeah, you're going to sneak out, but hey, just before you go, you're a beautiful soul, and just remember that you shine beautifully on this world, okay? All right, off you go. Get out of here. So let us finish. On the last page of your booklet, is a contract. I'm a gift to the earth. This is true. The only me out of 7.5 billion people, and I want to be the best me I can be. And to that end, I promise. And this is a contract you're making with and for yourself. A 1% change I can make in the next week. Something you could do for yourself or start to do in this next week. Just a tiny 1% change. When you get home, I've given you lots of homework, but you don't have to do it all tonight. Write down a commitment to yourself. I'm going to start doing this. Just a tiny change. And what do I need to do to make it happen? Well, I need to go outside because I want to go for a walk. I need to phone my friend because I want to have coffee. A 1% change you can do in the next month, something a little bit bigger, but sometime in the next 30 days, I could start doing this just for me. And it's most helpful if you find somebody to whom you can be accountable. And that little box at the bottom on the left says, I'll share this commitment with. That could be a friend or a family member. And you tell them, I went to this workshop and I've decided I want to start whatever. And I just wanted you to check in with me once in a while and see that I'm actually doing it. Because if we're accountable to somebody, well, that helps. So I want to really have you join me in thanking Kathy for creating a day where we could explore these hard questions and also just the wondrous beauty of us gathered in this room. So thank you so much. And so if you just look at somebody sitting at your table, just look them right in the eye and tell them that they're a beautiful soul. Look at the smiles, eh? Yeah, this is true. So I send love and light to you, to surround you and fill you, to send you into the rest of your day. I hope that your tank is a little bit fuller, that you've had some knowledge and some tools gained from the day. And thank you for taking time to make a difference in your community by being here. Thank you.